So I'm at a gathering the other night, and somebody tells me, who watches the channel, obviously, really, you shouldn't wear your pajama bottoms when you're doing these videos because people really won't take you seriously. I mean, okay. Seriously? I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, don't take me seriously then. I mean, I'm comfortable. I don't care. Screw it. So, pajama bottoms it is. Anyway, what's up everybody? Blessed be. My name is Mannun and you're watching Witch in the Working, where we will be discussing all things witchy in and around, throughout and about, above, below, and beyond. So, Wicca, witchcraft, is a whole world of ideas, customs, holidays, celebrations, life experiences, transformations, teachings, and cycles from the seasons all the way to the understanding of life, death, and rebirth. What's at the center of so many of these ingredients we find in our recipe for wisdom and knowledge? Ritual. Alright, welcome back everybody. As if you haven't realized it by now, this episode of Witch in the Working, we will be talking all about ritual. What is it? Where did it come from? Why do we do it? When do we do it? And especially, how do we do it? The definition of ritual is a religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order. A ritual is also a prescribed order in a sense of gestures, actions, and words that are performed usually to celebrate or honor a specific circumstance within a religion, tribe, or community of peoples. In fact, people are not the only species on this earth that utilize ritual in their cycles of life practice. Many mammals, birds, fish, and even insects perform rituals in their lives for everything for reasons of giving birth, preparing for death, teaching their young, and most importantly, my personal favorite, and definitely last but absolutely not least, to find a mate and reproduce. Make them babies. The word ritual comes from the Latin ritualis, which means that which pertains to rite or ritus. Ritus ultimately means correct performance or custom. Man has been performing rituals since they first began to assume that the sun was a supreme being that would grace their lives on a daily basis, bringing them light, warmth, and peace of mind from the things that go bump in the night. There's evidence that rituals were performed regularly to ensure that the waning sun would return to its full splendor and rise each day to bring back its glory to its faithful servants. It wouldn't be long before man would start performing hunting rituals amongst the tribes to ensure a successful hunt once the horn god was appeased to help secure a sacrifice from his flock to help bring the tribe clothing, tools, and food. A man, usually a priest or shaman, would lead a group of hunters in a ritual the evening before the hunt. This ritual would involve the priest or shaman dressing up as the horn god. Early man mostly practiced a form of magic called sympathetic magic, which is like attracts like. So they figured that if they were mainly hunting animals, mostly with horns, antelope, bison, deer, moose, buffalo, wildebeest, whatever, then the god of hunting must also have horns, as it only seemed natural to them. So this being said, the priest or shaman of the group or the tribe would adorn a headdress with horns, acting as the horn god, and he would lead his hunters into a ritualistic wild frenzy. In this frenzy, they would dance, jump, scream, and sing, raising tremendous amounts of energy, magic, and at the priest's signal and will, they would attack a wooden or clay bison, for instance, therefore, in their belief, making themselves successful on the hunt to proceed the following day. One of the earliest evidence pieces of this practice dates back thousands of years to 13,000 BC, named the Sorcerer. It's in fact a cave painting in France found in the cavern known as the Sanctuary at the cave of La Croix-Ferrère. Right about this same time, we also started seeing evidence of rituals performed that had to do with fertility. Fertility was just as important to early man as the hunt, for instance, as they realized early that the animals that provided such sustenance for them needed to be able to procreate to keep the herds hefty and strong. Not only to help provide for early man's existence, but also because even early man knew of the importance of the cycles of nature, and that all of these interactions and miracles that happen on a daily basis are what make this earth turn and provide life with everything around us. A lot of people these days forget this very important lesson, but I got news for you. The earth isn't going anywhere, people. Man will not destroy this earth, and to think so is pretty damned arrogant in the witch's mind. Now, we can and probably do damage Mother Earth quite a bit, but in the end, we're just gonna kill ourselves off, making the planet unlivable for us as beings. But Mother Earth was here long before us, and she will, if worse comes to worse, kick ass and take names and end our existence and just start again without us. Life will go on to exist in its many, many forms of existence. It's probably just going to be without us arrogant, destructive humans screwing things up from time to time. Also, fertility was important for not just the procreation and perpetuation of life in the herds of animals, but also in the herds of humans. Even our ancestors knew that there's strength in numbers, and so many welcomed and honored the woman for being that sacred gateway that brought forth sons and daughters to make for a strong and healthy family, tribe, and/or village. Figurines, dolls, and ancient carvings known as shilanagigs have been uncovered throughout Europe, stressing evidence of this over the years, as well as many other paintings, wood carvings, and imagery throughout the centuries. Ritual has been and still is used in every culture of man that exists in the world today. From tribes of indigenous peoples deep in the rainforest spreading across the plains and mountains of Africa, in and around the 7 continents that make up our spinning world from sea to shining sea, so to speak. If there are people living there, then there is ritual too. From the power and authority of the Catholic Church to the rituals of us humble, simple pagans, ritual is alive and well on a daily basis amongst human and animal kind alike. One of the common characteristics of ritual is that it consists of relatively the same gestures, actions, and words, if any, to be performed again and again, to honor, celebrate, or bring about a circumstance to occur by performing this special sequence in a specific order. The key to understand here is the word's consistency again and again, the same thing. This is what makes a ritual a ritual. If it's different every time, it's not really a ritual. If a bunch of actions are put together for honoring, celebration, or circumstances, then it's just that, an act. But if the same thing is carried out again and again, now it becomes a ritual. Get it? It's pretty simple. It's kind of a pretty simple concept. Some examples of rituals throughout history still carried out today. The Gnostic Mass of the OTO, baptisms and confirmations of the Catholic Church, marriage ceremonies in many Christian churches actually follow the same structure over and over again, making it ritual. You know, like when they say, you may kiss the bride, or till death do you part, etc., etc. And of course, many pagan denominations carry out the same rituals over and over again for decades and sometimes centuries. For instance, the rites of the Gardnerian Wiccans/witches, Alexandrians, Georgians, and the many other initiatory British traditional witchcrafts all utilize ritual in our practices, as we will do the same celebrations and ceremonies again and again, passed down from teacher to student throughout the years and lineages. There is in fact basically 8 characteristics that make a ritual, and these are: 1. Movement and gestures with meaning, clapping, kissing, waving, etc. Number 2. Repeated actions, for instance, gathering to visit a gravesite or circle sanctuary once a year. Number 3, symbolic celebrations, for instance, opening and closing Olympic ceremonies and prayer. Number 4, important events like initiations, elevations, wickenings, or handfestings. 5, significant words. Number 6, linkages of the past. Number 7, communal actions. And finally, 8, participation. There are many times in our cultures we are actually performing ritual and don't even realize it. For instance, prayer can be considered a form of religious ritual. Shaking hands is a form of ritual many of us don't even realize we're doing. For those of us who meditate regularly, again, a form of ritual practice. Giving gifts on Christmas, ritual. Putting out Easter baskets and having that Easter egg hunt, ritual. Going trick-or-treating on Halloween night, you guessed it, ritual. Think of some rituals that you know of that are so commonly performed by the masses and they don't even realize they're doing them. List them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear of some more that I'm not even thinking of. With ritual also comes a form of traditionalism. Traditionalism is the upholding or maintenance of tradition, especially so as to resist change. Many times these two cousins travel hand in hand throughout the centuries. I'm sure you've all heard of the usage of the word tradition, as in it's tradition in our family to make a wish with the wishbone during Thanksgiving dinner, or it's tradition to place a penny in some black-eyed peas during the New Year's dinner. Yeah, I just made 2 food analogies. Now you know where my mind is all the time. So, as it is in traditional Wicca, we have a tradition of practices and beliefs that are carried down from generation to generation. The same teachings, lessons, rituals, spells, practices, ideals, politics, etc., passed along over and over again, making it all traditional. And that includes our many traditional rituals. So I think we've talked quite a bit about ritual as a whole, so let's get it fine-tuned to Wicca and witchcraft now. So it's no secret that our pagan ancestors especially, from the ancient Sumerians to the Egyptians to the Greeks, Romans, Celts, and the dozens of other cultural pagan societies that have always practiced and still do to this day rituals. This isn't to say that the rituals performed thousands of years ago are still the exact same rituals performed today. But nonetheless, rituals are performed and in the definition of ritual, but as times change, so do some of the rituals. Like so many things in life, ritual is a living and breathing entity, and as time progresses, these rituals will sort of evolve over time, still keeping their structure and essence, but little changes will pop in here and there to accommodate the growing culture, religion, or circumstance. In Wicca/witchcraft, we have rituals that celebrate the 8 Sabbats. These Sabbats are Imbolc, February 1st or 2nd, Ostara around March 23rd, Beltane on May 1st, Midsummer around June 20th, Lugnacid on August 1st or 2nd, Mabon around September 23rd, Samhain on October 31st, and finally Yule around December 22nd. These are the 8 witches' holidays that celebrate the seasons and the turning of the wheel of the year. These Sabbats were actually just 4 in early Gardnerian Wicca, like back in the 1930s, but ultimately Old Man Gerald wanted to get together more often with his coven, so he incorporated the other 4 in the mix. The Sabbats started off with just the greater Sabbats, Imbolc, Beltane, Lugnacid, and Samhain. The addition of the cross quarters or the lesser Sabbats was introduced later, which are in fact the spring and autumnal equinoxes and summer and winter solstices. There are so many eclectic practices of Wicca today, and I'm sure each person and or coven practices a different ritual for each Sabbat. They'll practice the same purpose for each Sabbat. For instance, Lugnacid is the first harvest, but they will almost definitely perform a different actual ritual to celebrate this season than the person or coven in the next state over celebrating the same Sabbat, for instance. This is because there is no tradition involved. This is where an eclectic and a traditional witchcraft group would differ. For instance, myself being a Gardnerian witch, rest assured, for instance on Samhain night, whether you're a Gardnerian here in South Florida or a Gardnerian over in Spain, we will be practicing the same exact ritual that's been handed down generation to generation. It brings a stability and strength and foundation that I feel gives a power and energy to the Sabbat that I really can't explain. It can really just kind of be experienced. That doesn't lessen the experience and power and the energy of Sabbats being celebrated by eclectics, though, by any means. The fact that thousands of pagans around the world are all celebrating the same experience and circumstance, even if not the same ritual, around the same day or two is so very powerful and amazing in itself, and all of our ancestors are proud of us for carrying on the tradition and holiday. We as Wiccans and witches also celebrate the moon cycles utilizing ritual. This is where we will perform a ritual in honor of the full moon and the goddess at her full strength, glory, and power. The full moon energy is very sacred and powerful to almost all Wiccans and witches. It's built into us to honor and bathe in the mysteries and depths of the full moon rays and energies. Many times, traditionally, a drawing down the moon is performed by a high priestess. This is where a high priest in a coven acts as a conduit and assists the goddess energy into the high priestess, where she then invokes the goddess into herself and speaks the words of the Great Mother to her coven. Many times, this is a message that is invoked and given to the coveners as a very personal message that could be for each individual coven or as a group. This message, again, is usually very personal and usually helps guide in spiritual growth and lessons. A drawing down is a very, very powerful experience. And if given the opportunity to experience this piece of ritual in your practices, I strongly recommend it. It's even told to us Wiccans in the charge of the goddess for us to gather. Quote, "Whenever ye have need of anything, once in a month, and better it be when the moon be full, then ye shall assemble in some secret place and adore the spirit of me, who am queen of all witcheries." End quote. We as Wiccans will also celebrate and hold ritual on the new moon phases, though not always as often. The new moon is when the moon is completely dark, and it's in symbology of the goddess and her wise crone aspect. We as Wiccans and witches also hold rituals for handfestings, which is like a Wiccan marriage, Wiccanings, which is equivalent to a baby baptism of sorts, rites of passage like quinceañera, and crossing overs, which is a funeral for Wiccans. So there's a basic structure that almost all Wiccans utilize, whether eclectic or traditional. Most Wiccan ritual is very simple in its building blocks, and it's exactly like a sandwich. There's three main pieces: that is an erecting of the temple process, the closing of the temple process, and the ritual or spell work in the middle of those two. You can think of it like a sandwich, where the two pieces of bread are always present, but the meat in the middle is always something different depending on your taste that day. For instance, whether you're celebrating a Sabbath, an Esbit, the full moon for instance, or doing a spell working, the erecting and closing of the temple will always be performed, but the celebration or spell working in the middle is going to be different per the circumstance. So let's go over erecting the temple, as I like to call it. Some of you who are veterans may call it something different, but it's the same thing. Most always, every erecting of the temple starts off with a clearing and banishing of some kind. A very popular technique that has been used for centuries by Wiccans/witches is what's called besom. This is where a witch sweeps their circle before anything else is done to clear and banish any negative energies in the circle area. This is more of a spiritual and energy clearing than it is a physical cleaning. Some witches will do multiple clearings, but most of the time, 3 times around the circle with the broom is quite enough. Some have a chant they will say while besoming. Some do it silently. It's completely up to you. The next step in erecting a temple is a consecration. This is where the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, are prepared and blessed, making them wholesome and clean to be used within the rites. This is usually done with the ritual athame, or your pointer finger from your dominant hand. An invoking pentagram is drawn over the elements, and some words are said. So check out the info box above or the link in the description below to see my short video on consecrating to give you an idea of how to do this. The next step in erecting a temple is to call the elementals to be with you. These are the spirits of earth, air, fire, and water. They're extremely important in everything we do as Wiccans and witches, as our power is from these 4 elements. Sometimes groups recognize the kings and queens of these elements: Peralda, the king of air; Jin, the king of fire; Nixa, the queen of water; and Gob, the king of earth. These elementals are usually called by saying a few words and drawing invoking elemental pentagrams per the element, which is the air in the east, fire in the south, water in the west, and earth in the north. Some light candles at each quarter too for each elemental, usually yellow in the east, red in the south, blue in the west, and green in the north. After the elementals have been summoned, the most important part of a ritual is performed, and this is the casting of the circle. A circle is cast for 3 reasons in Wiccan ritual. 1, it's for protection against any negative or outside forces. 2, it's to separate and act as a realm between the worlds where magic is easily created and manipulated. It's said when in a circle, you're in fact between the worlds, not in this mundane world or the next, sort of in a womb, so to speak. And finally, 3, it's to act as a container to hold any power and magic raised within thee till thy command to unleash the power within and send it on its way to do its bidding. The circle should be drawn starting, for instance, in the east, the direction of the rising sun, and continued clockwise all the way around, ending in the east. You can use your finger, but most of us use a sword or their athame. You should concentrate and visualize a bluish light energy to trace out around the circle. This will then be visualized to go up into the air and above you like a cone. This is called a cone of power. See my info box above about the power of a witch that explains all of this a little better. I've also listed it in the description below. So, after you've cast a circle, you need to consecrate it with salt and water and incense and fire. Once this is done, you need to use the same salt, water, and incense and fire to consecrate yourself and the others within your circle. The next thing you'll want to do is call the mighty ones. The watchtowers are protectors to your 4 quarters. Yes, they are quarters, not the corners. Circles don't have corners. Anyway, this can be done in much the same way as the elementals, but instead of using invoking elemental pentagrams, you'll just utilize invoking earth pentagrams at all 4 quarters. The invoking earth pentagram is in fact the universal invoking pentagram. If ever in doubt and wanting to bring in some good energy or flash up some protection, use an earth invoking pentagram. From here, invite the god and goddess themselves to be with you and in your circle. A lot of people do this by simply asking the goddess to join the circle in a special flashy way and then light her candle. The same for the god and then light his candle. Sometimes there's a 3rd candle on the altar. This is a working candle and is usually lit at the beginning of the circle and is really used to light all the other candles and charcoals, etc. that you might have. Now you have successfully erected a temple. From here, you do your ritual or spell working, your meat in the middle of the sandwich, so to speak. After you've worked your ritual or cast your spell and everything is cleared and over, it's time to now close that temple. You always start closing your circle with a small ritual called cakes and ale or cakes and wine. This is where you bless a glass of wine or juice. Speaking of glass of wine or juice. Man, that's good. So this is where you bless some wine or juice and you get some cookies or little cakes or what have you, be creative. Partake of the wine and the cakes and leave some as an offering to put out for the fae and the spirits later. This is usually done by keeping a special libation dish on or just under your altar. Two ways to close a circle, and it's completely up to you. You can close the circle going widdershins, which is counterclockwise, opposite of how you cast it, or you can go diesel, clockwise, the same direction as when you cast it. What's the difference? Generally speaking, if you want to keep the energy somewhat, like if you have a special room dedicated to your circle area, then close the circle going diesel or clockwise. If you cast a circle in your living room or a place where you don't want the energy to be present anymore, like a public park or the beach or something, then do this next part widdershins or counterclockwise instead. Go to each quarter and draw a banishing elemental pentagram and then a second banishing earth pentagram to dismiss the elemental and the guardian or watchtower you summoned. You can say some words too if you wish. It's your call. It's really about the intent anyways. Say goodbye to the god and goddess and snuff their candles. You can either retrace your circle and suck the energy back into your Thermir sword, or the quickest way to dismiss a circle casting after you've said goodbye to everything and dismissed everything is to simply walk out of it, break it, and let the energy disperse back into the universe. Whatever sits well with you works best for you. So that's it, people. Erecting and closing the temple in a nutshell. I have included some words that I use for erecting and closing the temple in the description below. There are so many books out there with ideas to do this. Find one you like and go for it. All right, everybody, click that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and don't forget to ring that bell for future notifications. It has been awesome talking with you guys about ritual. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please come back for more. Blessed be.